You were never taught this. Nobody sat you down. Nobody explained the mechanics of your own heart. They taught you math, they taught you history, they taught you how to be polite, how to share, and how to shrink yourself just enough to fit into rooms that were never built for you. But the lesson on loving yourself never came. So you learned something else instead. You learned to look outward. You learned to measure your worth by someone else's reaction. You learned to stay when every fiber of your being whispered for you to leave. You learned to hand your self-respect to people who never asked for it and would not know what to do with it anyway. It became a habit, then it became a pattern, then it became a life. The loneliest place you will ever stand is inside a version of yourself you built for other people's approval. If that truth hits something in you, if some part of you knows it is time, type "I choose me" below. 3 words. That is where it starts. This is not just a video, it is a place to rest. If you are tired of performing, tired of shrinking, and tired of waiting for permission to exist fully, you are in the right room. Subscribe not because I am asking, but because you are finally ready to keep a promise to yourself. This is your space now. Here is the reframe. We often confuse people-pleasing with kindness. We tell ourselves we are just being nice, just being easy to get along with. But true kindness comes from a place of abundance. It flows from a full cup. What most of us call kindness is actually fear in a clever disguise. It is the terrifying belief that our authentic self is not enough to be loved, so we replace it with a version that is more convenient, more palatable, and less threatening. We are not giving love, we are begging for it. We must begin with the invisible wound. Most people walking this earth do not love themselves. Not really. They might say they do. They might possess the journal, the gym membership, and the vision board on the wall. But underneath all of that is a quiet, persistent voice that tells them they are not quite enough. Not smart enough, not attractive enough, not successful enough, not there yet. And here is the painful part. Most people do not even realize this is happening. When you have spent your entire life outsourcing your sense of worth to the world around you, it stops feeling like a wound. It just feels like normal. You refresh the notification. You wait for the text back. You say yes when you mean no, because somewhere deep down you have decided that keeping the peace is safer than keeping your integrity. This is what the absence of self-love actually looks like. It does not announce itself. It whispers. It operates quietly, systematically, in the background of your daily choices, shaping who you spend time with, what you tolerate, and how you speak to yourself at 2 a.m. when the world is quiet and there is no one left to perform for. You must understand the architecture of the performer. Think about the relationships in your life, the friendships where you do most of the giving, the romantic partnerships where your needs always seem to come last, the family dynamics where you have been cast in a role you never auditioned for, the peacemaker, the fixer, the one who holds everything together while quietly falling apart. You accepted these roles not because they were right for you, but because some part of you believed this was the price of belonging. You believed that love had to be earned. You believed that your presence alone was never quite enough. Where did that belief come from? For most people, it started early. A parent who made love conditional, a teacher who made you feel small, a group of peers who made belonging feel like a performance you had to perfect. Over time, these experiences did not just affect you. They defined you. They wired a belief system into your nervous system that you are only as worthy as your usefulness to others. They taught you that love is a transaction, and your value is determined by what you produce, what you provide, or how well you manage to avoid disappointing the people around you. There is a high cost to free rent. When you abandon yourself, you do not just lose yourself. You lose your time, your energy, your direction, your standards, and your voice. The terrifying thing is that it happens so gradually, so naturally, that most people do not feel the loss until they are standing in the middle of a life that looks perfectly reasonable from the outside and feels completely hollow on the inside. Think about the energy you spend managing other people's emotions. Think about the mental gymnastics you perform before sending a text, trying to predict how it will land. Think about the way you brace yourself before expressing an opinion, already preparing the apology in case someone disagrees. Think about the hours you spend replaying conversations, rearranging your words after the fact, wishing you had been more agreeable, more palatable, more easy. That energy is not free. It is costing you something real. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. He understood that your inner world is your actual life, not your circumstances, not your reputation, not what other people think of you in a given moment. When you spend the majority of your interior life managing external perception, you are spending your most valuable currency on something that will never make you rich. You are living according to opinion, not reason. The Stoics had a term for this kind of life. They called it living according to doxa. It is the total opposite of living according to reason. Epictetus was relentless on this point. He watched the powerful men of Rome, senators, generals, emperors, and saw that many of them were the least free people in the world, not because of external chains, but because their entire sense of self rose and fell with public perception. He saw men destroy their integrity for applause. He saw them betray their own values for acceptance. He said it plainly. A man who needs the approval of others has already surrendered his freedom. He was right then, he is right now. When you do not love yourself, you do not just hurt yourself, you hurt everyone around you. You attract relationships built on imbalance. You give from an empty cup and then resent the people drinking from it. You make decisions from fear instead of values. You stay too long in situations that are slowly eroding you because the terror of being alone feels worse than the certainty of being diminished. The world will take full advantage of that. This is the wound. Quiet, chronic, and completely treatable. But first, you have to see it clearly. You have built a courtroom inside your own mind. Think about the inner critic, that voice. You know the one. It arrives uninvited in the quiet moments. It replays your mistakes in high definition while blurring every success you have ever had. It measures your life against everyone else's highlight reel and finds you lacking. It tells you that you are too much and not enough simultaneously. That voice is not the truth. But when you have spent years without a strong, loving relationship with yourself, that voice becomes the loudest thing in the room. It fills the space that self-respect was supposed to occupy. Seneca wrote that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. He saw people torturing themselves with invented fears, invented failures, and invented inadequacies. The story you tell yourself about who you are is almost always harsher than the reality. The judgments you imagine others making about you are almost always louder than the ones they are actually making. You have appointed yourself both prosecutor and defendant, and you have scheduled a trial that never ends. If your chest feels tight right now, that is recognition. That is the part of you that knows the cost. Subscribe to this channel not as a follower, but as a witness to your own return. Let this be the place where you stop abandoning yourself. The Stoic framework begins with a distinction. Epictetus built his entire philosophy around one idea, the dichotomy of control. There are things within your power, your thoughts, your judgments, your responses, your values, your choices. And there are things outside your power, other people's opinions, their behavior, external events, circumstances you did not choose. Most people spend their entire lives pouring energy into the second category while neglecting the first entirely. Then they wonder why they feel powerless. Self-love, in Stoic terms, begins the moment you stop trying to control what others think of you and start taking radical responsibility for what you think of yourself. That is not a small shift. It is a complete reorientation of your entire inner life. To wake up in the morning and know, not hope, not wish, but know that your worth is not determined by the number of likes on a post or whether your boss acknowledged your work or whether someone you admire has noticed you. None of those things add to or subtract from who you are at your core. That is not arrogance. That is the most rational position a human being can take. You must learn to retire into yourself. Seneca wrote, "Recede inte ipse," retire into yourself. He was not talking about isolation. He was talking about knowing who you are when no one is watching. Most people never find out because most people have never stopped performing long enough to meet themselves. Seneca was prescribing sovereignty, the ability to sit with yourself without reaching for distraction, without needing noise or approval or the presence of someone else to feel like your existence is justified. That is a form of freedom that most people never experience. If you cannot enjoy your own company, you will always be vulnerable to bad company. You will accept relationships and situations that are beneath you simply because the alternative, your own quiet presence, feels unbearable. The person who is comfortable alone is never desperate, and a person who is never desperate makes infinitely better choices about who they let close. You must practice the sacred refusal. Start with your no. Most people treat no like a grenade, something dangerous and destructive to be avoided at all costs. But the Stoics understood something essential. Every yes you give to something that violates your values is a no to yourself. Every time you agree to something out of guilt or fear or the desperate need to be liked, you make a small withdrawal from the account of your self-respect. Accounts that are only ever withdrawn from eventually run dry. Saying no calmly and clearly without excessive apology or explanation is an act of self-love. It is a declaration that your time, your energy, and your peace of mind are real things with real value. You do not owe the world unlimited access to yourself. You owe yourself the protection of your own inner life. Practice it in small ways first. The invitation you attend out of obligation when you desperately need rest. The favor asked of you by someone who has never once returned one. Say no. Notice what happens in your body when you do. That relief you feel is not guilt. That is your nervous system recognizing the truth. The deeper mechanism at work here is a maladaptive survival strategy. You did not learn to abandon yourself because you were weak. You learned it because at some point it worked. When you were young, shrinking may have kept you safe. Managing the emotions of volatile adults may have kept the peace. Predicting the reactions of others may have earned you the crumbs of affection you needed to survive. You wired your brain to believe that your safety depended on your ability to read the room and mold yourself to it. But you are not a child anymore. The threat that forced you to perform is gone, yet the performance continues. You are running an operating system that was installed decades ago on hardware that has since been updated. The tragedy is that the very strategy that saved you then is what is killing you now. You are exhausting yourself to solve a problem that no longer exists. You must forgive yourself for surviving. The Stoics were uncompromising about this. Marcus Aurelius wrote again and again in his meditations about the practice of beginning again, not wallowing in past error, not performing elaborate self-punishment, but examining what happened, extracting the lesson, and returning to virtue without drama. He called this the discipline of assent, the choice to accept what has occurred, learn what is useful, and move forward without carrying the weight of it indefinitely. You have made mistakes. You have stayed too long. You have trusted too easily. You have given too much. So has every human being who has ever lived, including the greatest Stoic philosophers. The question is never, did you fail? The question is always, what will you do with the failure? Self-forgiveness is not excusing yourself. It is refusing to let the past have more authority over your present than your present values do. It is choosing with full consciousness to be the person you want to be, starting now, not after you have punished yourself sufficiently. Confidence follows action, not the other way around. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." Most people skip the first part entirely. They never decide what they would be. They just respond to demands, to expectations, to whoever is pulling the hardest. They shape themselves around the needs of the room and then wonder why they feel invisible in it. You do not wait until you feel ready to make the brave choice. You make the brave choice and discover, on the other side of it, that you are readier than you thought. You do not wait until you feel worthy of love before loving yourself. You treat yourself with love and watch your sense of worth slowly recalibrate to match it. This is the compounding effect of self-respect in action. Every boundary you hold builds trust with yourself. Every promise you keep to yourself builds integrity with yourself. Over time, that message becomes the foundation you stand on. There is a version of your life waiting on the other side of this work. Not a perfect life. Not a life free of difficulty or loss or the complicated human things that no philosophy fully immunizes you against. But a life that is yours. A life lived from the inside out rather than the outside in. A life in which you wake up and your first thought is not, what does everyone need from me today? But who am I choosing to be today? When you love yourself, you stop settling. Not dramatically, not in a blaze of righteous anger, but quietly, clearly, with the kind of calm authority that comes from knowing your own worth. You simply stop agreeing to things that diminish you. You stop performing for rooms that were never built for you. You stop handing your peace to people who treat it carelessly. You are breaking something old. You are choosing. The world will adjust. It always does when a person decides, truly decides, that they are worth the life they are living. You are. You always were. Now act like it.